For at least the last decade, unknown to many, human beings have been eating foods created in laboratories. This is a completely new phenomenon, with no long-term studies having been conducted as to the effects of such food. The human race, serving as guinea pigs, is part of the largest uncontrolled experiment ever undertaken. Today, about two-thirds of all food available in supermarkets has been genetically engineered. Government agencies have long assured the public that these new biotech foods present no threat to human health or the environment. Only now are many realizing the extent to which they have been misled and the ominous consequences of this genetic intrusion. Hence, my goal today would be to persuade you to take an opposing stand towards GM food. Before I delve deeper into their risks or disadvantages, let me first begin by talking about the principles and science behind GM food. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, genetically modified, otherwise known as GM foods, are foods derived from organisms whose genetic material, or otherwise known as DNA, has been modified in a way that does not occur naturally. This technology is often called modern biotechnology, sometimes also referred to as genetic engineering. It allows selected individual genes to be transferred from one organism into another, also between non-related species. Okay, so let's take a look at an example. By employing genetic engineering, researchers can take certain genes from a source organism and put them into another plant or animal. So for example, scientists take Bacillus thuringiensis, a commonly occurring soy bacteria, and use enzymes to remove it from the Bt gene, which produces a protein that turns toxic in the digestive tract of caterpillars. The Bt gene is then incorporated in the chromosomes of cotton and corn, killing caterpillars that feed upon these plants. Now moving back to the origin of GM foods, which I will not go so in-depth to, but here is a simple timeline summarizing the key events that led up to the rise of genetically modified foods in the world. As you can see, it all started as early as 1973 when recombinant DNA was discovered. Subsequently, by 1982, the first GMO was already approved by the Food and Drug Administration. And by 1994, before I was even born, GMO had already started hitting grocery stores. They were a big hit and had begun dominating worldwide in a 5-year time span since their introduction. Genetically modified material sounds a bit like science fiction theory, but in reality, much of what we eat on a daily basis is a genetically modified organism. Whether or not these modified foods are actually healthy is still up for debate, and many times you don't even know what you're buying that is something genetically modified. Take for instance corn. Almost 85% of corn grown in the US is genetically modified. Even Whole Foods brand of cornflakes was found to contain genetically modified corn. Soy is the next most heavily genetically modified food in the country. The largest US producer of hybrid seeds for agriculture, Pioneer Hybrid International, created a genetically engineered soybean, which was approved in 2010. It is modified to have a high level of oleic acid, which is naturally found in olive oil. Oleic acid, as you know, is a monounsaturated fatty acid that may help to lower LDL cholesterol. Another major GM food crop available would be tomatoes. They're usually made for a longer shelf life, and they prevent a substance that causes tomatoes to rot and degrade. Okay, moving on to why were they produced. GM foods are developed and marketed because there is certain perceived advantages either to the consumer or producer of these foods. This is meant to translate into a product with a lower price, greater benefit, whether it's in terms of durability or nutritional value or both. Initially, GM seed developers wanted their products to be accepted by producers and to bring direct benefit to farmers. Transgenetically modified plants and animals are projected to benefit namely these areas: health and the environment. This includes enhancement of food security, enhancement of nutrient security, more targeted health benefits such as immunization, and reduction of diet-related adult-onset chronic diseases through the manipulation of specific food components, for instance fat composition. So here's a summary of the advantages. Firstly, GM foods have better overall quality and taste. Through the modification of foods, flavors can be enhanced. Peppers can become spicier, corn can become sweeter. Even difficult flavors can become more palatable. Secondly, plants and animals that have been genetically modified can become more resistant to the unexpected problem of disease. Think of it as a vaccine for that plant or animal, except that the vaccine is encoded into the genetics instead of a shot given to the immune system. Thirdly, GMO foods can have vitamins and minerals added to them through genetic modifications to provide greater nutritive benefits to those who eat them. This is especially common in developing countries that don't always have the access to the needed resources. And fourthly, GM foods are often touted to have been more capable of thriving in regions with poor soil or adverse climates. However, can they actually uphold their promises? Does reality actually indicate otherwise? Biotech corporations which develop and market genetically engineered crops often promote their products as ideal solutions to nutrition, world hunger, and the environment. However, the following issues I am soon going to explain shows how some of these claims presented by biotech promoters fall far short of reality. You may ask why the known advantages of GM foods may not be as superior as perceived to be. So, firstly, nutrition-wise, scientists claim that their genetically altered crops are nutritionally superior compared to the naturally occurring crops. For example, the promoters of golden rice touted it to be superior to natural rice in vitamin A and other nutrients. Extensive testing later revealed this rice to actually be inferior to natural rice. The well-documented book Genetically Engineered Foods, Are They Safe? Exposes the facade given to golden rice and other biotech foods. It presents ample proof that GE foods are missing vitally important nutrients. The developers of GM foods also claim that mutated foods are the answer to the dilemma of world hunger. Increased crop yield will help to feed the ever-growing population, especially in LDCs. But it is interesting that one of the largest biotech companies has developed the Terminator seed, in which the seeds produced are sterile. Farmers using these seeds will have to purchase their seed annually instead of saving it from the previous crops. If such crops were to become universal, then 1.4 billion farming families, mostly in third world countries, would be at the mercy of these biotech companies. Far from seeking a solution to world hunger, it would seem that these companies would hold the world's poorest farmers at hostage in the interest of greater profits. Fortunately, the vast majority of third world nations have flatly rejected the use of Terminator seeds. Also, assuming the biotech industry sincerely hopes to feed the world, do they actually have the capacity to? The promoters of GM crops claim that crops can produce much higher yields than what normally occurs. However, researchers have repeatedly proven that these biotech claims are false. Genetically engineered seeds may not significantly improve crop yield. For instance, one study by the Board of Agriculture of the National Academy of Sciences showed that genetically engineered soybeans actually produce fewer bushels of soybeans than those grown from natural seeds. Biotech promoters claim that their newly developed crops will help preserve the environment. Already, some unexpected surprises have surfaced. In 1999, scientists at Cornell University discovered that pollen from mutated corn settled on the leaves of milkweed plants, from which the monarch butterfly larvae feed. The larvae died in just 4 days. As a result, about half of the monarch butterfly population has already died, threatening its extinction. If the delicate butterfly is the first to die, what will be next? Mutated Atlantic salmon, developed on biotech fish farms, grow to maturity 4 times faster than normal. An environmental nightmare would result if any of the mutated fish escape into the wild and bred with their original species. This would devastate fish populations because the available food supply would not be able to sustain these fish at all. Hence, as you can see, the advantages may not seem as fantastic as they sound. As for the disadvantages they pose, public concerns about gene technology lie in four major areas, namely effects on the environment, food safety and human health, ethical concerns, as well as socio-economic issues. Environmentally, genetically modified crops could pose a risk to food biodiversity as the plants are much more dominant. Herbicide-resistant and pesticide-resistant crops could give rise to super weeds and super pests that would need stronger and newer chemicals to destroy them. GMO crops cross-pollinate with nearby non-GMO plants and will create ecological problems. This is as illustrated with the emergence of the first superweed, a plant that could not be killed by almost anything in Canada. A single canola plant in Ottawa was discovered to be resistant to numerous types of pesticides. Canola plants had escaped and crossbred with one another to produce offspring that were even more resistant than their parents. They were wreaking havoc in wheat fields and other prospective areas in which farmers did not want them to grow in. Finally, there will always be the unknown long-term effects to the ecosystem and biodiversity when inducing change in the natural traits of crops through unnatural means. Many worry that the pollen of genetically modified foods could have unintended consequences for animals that interact with the crops, such as the monarch butterflies as mentioned before. For example, research has proven that the plantation of a GM plant, Bt corn, resulted in a high mortality rate in monarch butterfly caterpillars. Unfortunately, the ideal conditions for the plantation of the Bt corn coincides with that of the milkweed plant, which is the staple food for these butterflies. Milkweed plants were unable to compete and were wiped off in large amounts due to the prevalence of the Bt corn in the ecosystem. This caused monarch butterflies to perish in significant numbers owing to the insufficient food supply. Hence, this perfectly illustrates the adversity of GM crops to the environment. But there has been much controversy with regards to the safety aspect of such foods. It's relatively harder to appraise the safety of foods originating from genetically modified crops compared to individual chemicals, food additives, or drugs. This is because the genetic composition of crop foods is much more complex and may vary in accordance to discrepancies in growth and ergonomic conditions. An example of this is the initial assessment of a GM food called the Flavor Saver tomato. The safety test in regards to the safety of the tomato is oversimplified and does not encompass all aspects of how a safety test should be. As such, the safety test is defectively planned and executed, rendering the conclusion that GM tomatoes were safe impossible. So how safe exactly are GM foods? Even worse, it is possible that by introducing foreign genes into the genetic makeup of a plant may result in negative impacts upon the well-being of humans. As the application of genetic engineering is relatively new to the human society, there's inadequate scientific study regarding the many dangers to the health caused by GM foods, and safety test technology is insufficient in gauging the potential dangers to the humans. For instance, they could be carcinogenic. According to a study, rats fed a diet of GM corn were more likely to develop tumors than others. GM foods could also contain genes from foods that are known allergens and consumers might not know what they are eating. Imagine someone going with a peanut allergy going into an anesthetic shop after eating an apple that contained peanut genes in it. In fact, something like this happened with a batch of soybeans that contained protein from the Brazil nut. Reports in UK also showed that allergic reactions to soy shot up dramatically in the UK after the introduction of a genetically modified soybean. Introducing a GM food into the market worldwide proves to be a costly and arduous process, in which companies involved would then be inclined to ensure profitable revenue for their investment. To avoid copyright infringement, these companies then patent new GM crops produced by them. This would inevitably raise the cost of the seeds of GM. In addition, agri-biotechnological companies might abuse the cost of these seeds to generate more profit to the dejection of farmers. Other disadvantages include ethical concerns. Genetic engineering allows the introduction of animal products in plants, which could raise issues for those with dietary restrictions, like vegetarians or vegans, or those who refrain from eating certain foods due to religious reasons. Also, another one would be the socio-economic drawbacks. Introducing genetically engineered seeds to developing countries make local farmers dependent upon large multinational companies like Monsanto, who could push those farmers into a cycle of debt, which is bad for food security and local farmers. After much debate on the advantages and disadvantages of GM foods, I am of the opinion that GM foods should be forbidden for the greater good of mankind due to the human health hazards, environmental risks, as well as the exceedingly high cost for cultivation. GM food has not been proven to be entirely safe for human consumption as well. Also, the benefits may not seem as good as they sound. Therefore, we, as humans capable of thought and logic, must progress with caution and prudence lest we bring destruction to ourselves and to the environment. Only by doing so can the future of mankind be guaranteed and the lives of our future generations spared from unnecessary dilemmas. And with that, I thank you.